Discovery, launch director.
Discovery, go ahead, sir.
Well, CJ, the vehicle's clean and the teams are go. And this time Mother Nature is cooperating, so it looks like third time really is the charm. We wish you and your team good luck and Godspeed.
Thanks, Pete. On behalf of the crew of Discovery, thanks to everyone who helped prepare for this mission. Let's go step up the science on the International Space Station.
NTD launch director, you do have a go to launch Discovery.
And I copy that, launch director.
Copy on Discovery OTC, close the launch advisors, initiate O2 flow.
Discovery, roger. There goes the beanie cap crew. Let's go ahead and check the tap in.
Pressurization.
Roger. 102, auto. 5, 6, 7, there we go. Help me later on the left. On the right. Houston Discovery, roll program. Roger, roll Discovery. 3 at 104. Copy. Needles are centering up.
PC less than 50.
Copy, Jose. Oh, yeah. All right. 103, Team Ecos.
Cut up on the live.
Copy, Jose. There it is. All right, 25-8. All right, you can raise up your seat if you want to. Good.
Timer.
All right, good job. All right. Let's work hard. The tank, and I'm waiting for the 20-second plus X. Lift up in your seat. There it goes. All right, we're waiting for 104. 1 potato, 2 potato. I started it at 56. I will release it at 16 after.
Well, there's no experience on the planet quite like the experience of leaving the planet. That rocket is just absolutely amazing, and you've just had the ride of your life. You're recovering from it, and looking around the cockpit to see how everybody else did. Everything's still lit up and just going like crazy. The sights and sounds and sensations are just unbelievable. About halfway around the planet, we do an OMS 2 burn, so we still get a little acceleration. But now you're in for just about 2 weeks of 0G, so now you're in for the second most interesting ride of your life. Nicole is securing her watch there down on the mid-deck. One thing you learn right away is if you don't tie it down or put it on some Velcro, you are not going to see it until about time of the deorbit burn there. So we just all really enjoyed the ascent. There's a lot of work to be done right away, getting the payload bay doors open so that those can provide cooling for the orbiter, and getting a go for orbit operations. Really felt good to everybody. We were all just having a great time after all that time in crew quarters, I can tell you that. There's a lot of things that aren't quite like simulations. One of them is all the stuff you have on the mid-deck. You have to get it all out, put it away, and make it livable. The folks who have flown before know things like if you want to throw something away, some waste paper, you don't have to pass it to somebody. You can just send it all the way across the cockpit and get it put away. Jose really enjoyed setting up the computers all the time, but he really enjoyed it a lot more on that night. Just had a lot of fun doing it. CJ told us always to keep our 1G orientation until we got used to things, and then, of course, he comes down the steps head first right away just to show he's been there before, and the rules don't really apply to him. So Nicole's setting up the ergometer. There's just a lot to do that first night. It's really like setting up a household. Everything is well trained for us, and we were ready to go. Occasionally we get a little bit delayed because things are so much fun, and you just have to play a little bit, spend a little time, and then we all get back to work. Morning of flight day 2, just getting some domestics done. You can see how much fun Nicole is having in space, and Pat as well taking care of some business. We just did some things like doing some burns that day to catch up. We also spent the day doing the inspection of our thermal protection system so that we were ready to go the next day. Jose is here checking out all the tools we'll use for rendezvous the next day. Occasionally we do a burn with the OMS engines, get about a 20th of a G out of that, and we always like to just let a timer go to make sure we're not at 0 G, usually 10 or 12 seconds for those burns.
Okay, after inspection, the next big thing is the rendezvous phase of our flight, and you saw there Nicole looking through the binoculars of what will be her new home for the next 2.5 months or so. And so what we end up doing is we start preparing for that phase of flight. And one of the things that we do when we get close enough to the International Space Station is we do an RPM, and that's in addition to our flight day inspection, flight day 2 inspection, we do a 360-degree rotation so that the space station, International Space Station crew can take pictures of our thermal protection systems, and that's another form of inspection. And as you can see, we complete it and then go on and continue into the docking phase of our flight. And as you can see, the payload doors are open for cooling purposes, and of course you can see there the multi-purpose logistics
Raw
module.
TCS 0.07.
Copy?
HHLs maybe about 0.06.
Here comes a BN. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Should get it back in the
Yeah,
middle. So
that's
we,
okay.
So we have
Yep.
a firm idea of what it
Yeah,
is.
that's exactly. Tux warned us about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you got it up to about 0.09 there, so
Okay.
that's nice.
That worked good. Fingers on a button.
2 feet.
Decimal 1.
Big pedal overlap going outside.
Don't move your hand.
Okay. Pedal overlap.
Good closure.
Capture.
Fired.
Capture light.
Okay.
All right.
Capture light.
Looking for free drift.
You never got the
Station
contact light.
in Houston from Discovery. Capture confirmed.
Did we
All
get it?
right.
Got flashing red. All right. Good job.
As you can see, it's pretty obvious when we make contact, and everybody's very happy because now we're made it to the International Space Station. Our next job is to work and start working our end of the hatch while the International Space Station crew start working their end. And in a matter of a few hours, what we do is we're able to make contact with them, and we're going to be with them for the next 9 days or so.
Yes, Space Shuttle Discovery arriving.
And ISS Commander announcing, Gennady Padalka announcing our arrival. And first to come into the International Space Station is our own commander, CJ Sturckow, and the rest of the crew comes down. They're actually very happy to see us because we come bringing fresh fruit and vegetables, so I think that's what they're the most happy about. And we also bring them a few souvenir T-shirts, because what would a trip be without a souvenir T-shirt? And you would think 13 people would be pretty crowded at the inside the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle, but in actuality, there were days when I wouldn't see 1 or 2 of the crew members, even though I moved in and out of the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle. It's just that we're all busy doing our work, and sometimes you just don't run into each other.
So what you see down to the right there is our cargo module, which is called Leonardo. And the day after we docked, that is to say the flight day 4, we docked it. And what you could see there, by the way, it was a picture from the control room with our lead shuttle director, Tony Sicacci, in the far end. The Leonardo module was grappled with an arm, which was flown here by Kevin to right and Mike Barrett to left, and they control it from the lab in the station. And here we can see how they approach the module towards the Node 2 nadir docking port. And this is the view which Kevin had on his computer and camera screen when he was closing in. After quite some practical work to get ready to open the hatch, Frank Twin there and I could open it. We didn't know how the air would be inside, so we had masks and goggles on. But it was really very clean air inside, so we could quickly remove that. And as you see, Control Center had already arranged for us so there was lights on inside. It's a big module with a lot of things we brought up, and a very efficient way to transfer the things is that you line up a lot of crew members and you pass the things along like this, where it gets out of the MPNM through the node to and into the GEM, the Japanese module. And it's a very fun work, actually. See how happy people are here. We also had payload with us on the shuttle from Middeck. This is the MDS payload, which was transferred by Nicole and Pat into the GEM and installed there. And I believe it will come back with Nicole also on the next shuttle.
With the MPLM successfully installed, half the crew went to work on transferring those. The rest got ready for the 3 EVAs that we were going to do on this mission. Here we are the night before the first one, doing a little bit of pre-EVA planning, and then that crew went into the airlock to spend the night so they could purge their body of nitrogen. They'll depress it down to 10.2. Once they spend the night in there, they get up the next morning. They take a quick break while they're still wearing the mask, and then we close that hatch once again, but this time with our IV crew members that are going to help suit them up. And they'll go through a series of about 200 steps to get them in the suits and everything ready for them to go out. And that's Jose down there on the right is our primary suit up IV, and Tim providing some of the expertise, having been up there for a couple months for this first EVA. And this one will be Danny and Nicole. That's Danny on the right and Nicole on the left as they're in the equipment lock getting their suits on.
And Nicole, your right waist tether to the forward UIA D-ring.
And I can confirm right waist tether forward UIA D-ring, bill closed, ladder lock.
Great. Danny, I see the airlock thermal cover is open. You can egress the airlock. Remember to avoid that MMOD strike.
Roger that.
I had the pleasure of being the IV crew member on the inside for all 3 of these EVAs. We had great support from the ground, great procedures. It looks like I could just look out the window and have a view of them, but the station has gotten so big that I relied mostly on camera views with the monitors, and we'd keep up with their progress from in there. Had a lot of help on the flight deck. Besides the procedures, we also monitor cameras. One of the big tasks that we did spread over the first 2 EVAs was to change out an ammonia tank. The very first day they removed the old tank from the port side of the space station, and then that was Nicole holding an experiment called UTEF that came off the Columbus module and would be stowed in the payload bay for return. On the second EVA, they took the new ammonia tank out of the payload bay and carried that up to the port truss. Krister had a nice long ride holding that and had beautiful views. It takes about 90 minutes to go around the Earth. Half of that's in the dark and the rest is light, and when the sun is out, the folks outside just have beautiful views. And there's a view of Krister on the arm. He thought he'd be staring at that ATA the whole way, but as it turns out, he had a pretty good view of the Earth as it went underneath. There's Robert down in the control room. That CJ mentioned what great support we got on the ground and from our team. We had a couple hiccups with the spacewalks. There's Danny. He spent a little bit of time in the payload bay, which means we would have great views of him out the aft payload windows. He was on the starboard side. There's Krister on the port side. Once those EVAs were over, each one of them, of course, the team would then open up the hatch and bring them in and get them out of the suits. From the time they put the suits on till the time they get out exceeds about 8 hours, so it's also a lot of work. They've got water with them inside the suits, but nothing else. So usually the first thing they wanted to do when they got out was to go get something to eat and relax a little bit before the next EVA. It took the team that was inside a lot of work after that. They would prepare the suits, get the equipment, the batteries charged, and everything ready for the next one.
One of the major objectives was to transfer 6 very large racks from the MPLM, the logistics module, into space station. We had places prepared for that. You can see Frank DeWinna and Krister here moving one of those large racks through. I believe this is the T2, the new treadmill that we're going to install on board. And you can see them moving it through the very small space between the hatches, but they're both very skilled at moving them between the hatches, and it works just great for each of those 6 racks. You can see my space station crewmate, Mike Barrett, moving the treadmill portion of that rack through. And as most people know, this treadmill had lots of press and has lots of different names, T2 being one of those. And you can see Frank DeWinna here just continuing with the work. We have lots of tools on board, and frankly, the maintenance tasks and the installation of new hardware is one of the favorites in terms of our work on board. There are so many items that get transferred during, especially an MPLM mission, that it's very important to keep very meticulous records. And that's one great thing about this crew, is keeping track of that. This is my seat liner and Sokol spacesuit, and it's a major milestone between Nicole and myself, because once hers is installed, then she officially becomes a space station crew member. We also had lots of equipment stowed behind the racks, and Jose is moving one of the racks out so that we can retrieve those items and get them installed on space station. And just another piece of hardware, you can see CJ taking this through, and it's largely a record-keeping task for this. This is a note written by one of our fellow astronauts, Marcia Ivins, and she's done a great job for us making sure that we keep track of all the items on board. You know, what's funny about space station is you end up doing things a lot differently. Here's Frank DeWinna using his legs as a means of transporting things into the MPLM. You do things a lot different once you've lived on space for a couple of months. We had one of the bolts fail that connects the MPLM to space station, and so Bob Thursk and I removed the failed bolt and installed a new one. And after that, we were able to move out the MPLM and have it reinstalled back in the payload bay.
And of course, aside from all the technical stuff that we did, you know, if you're in space and you're not having fun, then you're doing something wrong. You can see here Nicole taking full advantage of the volume inside the MPLM to do a little bit of acrobat maneuvers. The stowage on orbit is pretty tight, but there's always room to have a little bit of fun. You can see Nicole here enjoying her time. You know, being the father of 5, I can tell you that the kids didn't care a whole lot about the EVAs, but boy, they loved playing with food and playing with water. So here we were making some of our patented space eyeballs, and down the hatch it goes for Tim. And Kevin decided to take a new spin on the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You can see here both the peanut butter and jelly. Neither one of them knows that the other one exists, so kind of a very interesting thing. You can see here CJ was getting a little long in the top side. Give him a quick haircut. And things don't behave as you might expect on the ground. We start spinning them around in orbit, and we could amuse ourselves for hours with some of the simplest things. Most notably yourself. If you had nothing else around, you just kind of bundled yourself up in a little ball and just sat there and spun yourself around. This is what it looks like if you are the one being spun up. And I will tell you that if you let it, it'll really get you, it'll really spin up your gyros. And of course, moving the pieces of equipment around are a little bit more fun because you can do your work and have fun along the way. The space to move and work around in a 1G environment is really tight, but in a 0G you can take full advantage of the third dimension, and it's really easy to move and work around in space. You can see here we're closing the hatch on the MPLM, buttoning it up, and getting it ready before it comes home. And once we had the hatches closed, we went ahead and the robotics operators pulled it away from space station and then berthed it into the payload bay. After we had all of our work done, next was a celebration. So we were invited by the space station crew members to come and have a feast, a traditional feast over in the International Space Station. This happened to be in Node 1. And of course, since we had representation from so many countries, the food came from all over. We had Belgian food, Swedish food, Japanese food, Canadian food, and even good old-fashioned American food. Eating in orbit is quite a challenge, and of course drinking. Now in the International Space Station, we recycle the urine and turn it back into potable water, and that's exactly what we're doing there, is drinking that. But after all the work had been done, it was time to go. It's bittersweet. There was Nicole saying goodbye to us, and we put the standoff cross onto the docking alignment guides and closed the hatch one final time. Flight day 11 for our undocking on flight day 12. And this is the magic button that makes everything go, makes the space station and the space shuttle separate, the big undocking button.
Looks good. 220, undocking push, hooks, close, lights are both out.
Kicked off. Yeah. You can use the other one for putting it away.
Yeah. 20 seconds. Hooks at 9%.
Okay. Yep, here we go.
Under complete light, hooks up and two are open.
Houston end station from Discovery, physical separation.
Clear? Okay.
Pedals clear.
All right, LVLH on the DAP.
TCS is coming in.
Okay.
Got a 1.3 opening, a 0.13 opening.
All right, I see LVLH. Good job.
0.7, got good TCS.
Pulse. No low Z is verified.
20.17.
And we can turn, Mike, thanks.
30 feet or 3. Well, we undocked from the International Space Station. Our pilot, Kevin Ford, was at the controls, and he slowly backed us away. You can see there's a lot of activity on the flight deck, people taking pictures. Most of the time when we did this undocking, there was just a couple people in the simulator, but it was a good challenge for Kevin to do such a great job flying us back out. It's a beautiful sight when the sun comes up on the space station and you see it in all its glory. You can't really appreciate it when you're docked to it. It was very big, but as we backed away, we could see really how big it is. It's just huge. It's going to have more volume than a 747 on the inside and be bigger than a football field. After we backed out to about 400 feet, Kevin initiated a fly around, and he flew us 360 degrees around the space station while the crew continued to take pictures. This every once in a while when you see the camera jolt, those are the jets firing that maintain the attitude control of the space shuttle. We did have a failure which made this a little more challenging for Kevin as he flew us around, but you can see he kept us right inside the circle there till we got all the way around, and then he did a couple of separation burns, SEP 1 and SEP 2, and we put the station in the rearview mirror. We still had a lot of work to do that afternoon after the SEP burns as we're moving away from the space station with the robotics to inspect the shuttle, make sure there had been no recent damage to any of the thermal protection system.
HP, right arm sail HP, and engine sail and safe HP are all 80.
We agree, all four of those are 80. You can see we've already done the deorit burn, and now that's about 0.1 G.
That's really nice. Give it a little toss up.
We're hitting the atmosphere now. You can see the Mach meter trip over to 25 there, which is very good. Came into the Edwards Air Force Base, like I said. The shuttle flies very nicely. It's our lead ascent entry flight director, Richard Jones, and our Capcom, Eric Bowe.
We had a good repo, sir. Max. Flight Max late shoot for the direct shoot DTO. Still on.
Discovery, Houston, on energy approaching the hack. No changes to winds or weather. For the crosswind DTO, will be late shoot deploy.
Okay, we're late shoot deploy. Kevin and I have got our covers closed.
Copy.
Kevin Ford in control of the stick at this moment. Discovery now going subsonic. The fleet-leading shuttle announcing its arrival at the landing site with a pair of sonic booms. The late afternoon sunshine gleaming off its thermal protection heat shield. 3 minutes until touchdown. Rick Sturckow has taken back the stick from Kevin Ford. The vortices off the wings, very obvious. Discovery continuing its turn around the heading alignment circle, aligning with runway 22 at Edwards Air Force Base.
In a minute, you'll see the shadow on the clouds of the shuttle. Watch closely in the upper right.
That valve is open.
Discovery, on at the 180.
On at the 180. Nice called. Runway in sight right there. I see one happy pappy on the nominal, CJ. Runway in sight, Houston. Guidance looks great. Thank you. I agree.
Discovery, we copy. Copy.
Right there, rolling out. I'm going to do my first declutter with a great overlay. I agree. All right, following guidance right down the middle. See you on center line. Copy. Good slope there. Yep. Correcting back nicely. Very nice. CJ, just like an S. Yep. Coming up on the pre-flare. Pre-flare next. Pre-flare arm to gear. Arm with a good light. Quarter diamond. 304. See your speed brakes right at 50. Copy. Really nice. A little lag. Coming down to the ball bar. On a ball bar. 400. Gear down, please. Gears on the way. I see you coming to the ball bar. Okay, a little more aft. You're on the center line on the ball bar. Coming a little right. On the center line on the ball bar. Keep coming up. Keep coming up. Keep it coming. There's 5230. Yeah, 5230. Now you're at 4225. Hold on. Guys, 20, 15, 2.
The shuttle flies very much like our simulators that we have, both our shuttle training aircraft and the simulators at the Johnson Space Center. It flies much better than the simulators out here in the lobby of Space Center Houston.
Houston Discovery, wheel stop.
Copy, wheel stop. Welcome home, Discovery. Congratulations on an extremely successful mission, stepping up science to a new level on the International Space Station.
The folks who have flown before know things like if you want to throw something away, some waste paper, you don't have to pass it to somebody. You can just send it all the way across the cockpit and get it put away. Jose really enjoyed setting up the computers all the time, but he really enjoyed it a lot more on that night. Just had a lot of fun doing it. CJ told us always to keep our 1G orientation until we got used to things, and then, of course, he comes down the steps head first right away just to show he's been there before, and the rules don't really apply to him. So Nicole's setting up the ergometer. There's just a lot to do that first night. It's really like setting up a household. Everything is well trained for us, and we were ready to go. Occasionally we get a little bit delayed because things are so much fun, and you just have to play a little bit, spend a little time, and then we all get back to work. Morning of flight day 2, just getting some domestics done. You can see how much fun Nicole is having in space, and Pat as well taking care of some business, and looking around the cockpit to see how everybody else did. Everything's still lit up and just going like crazy. The sights and sounds and sensations are just unbelievable. About halfway around the planet, we do an OMS 2 burn, so we still get a little acceleration, but now you're in for just about 2 weeks of 0G, so now you're in for the second most interesting ride of your life. Nicole is secure in her watch there down on the mid-deck. One thing you learn right away is if you don't tie it down or put it on some Velcro, you are not going to see it until about time of the deorbit burn there. So we just all really enjoyed the ascent. There's a lot of work to be done right away, getting the payload bay doors open so that those can provide cooling for the orbiter, and getting a go for orbit operations. Really felt good to everybody. We were all just having a great time after all that time in crew quarters, I can tell you that. There's a lot of things that aren't quite like simulations. One of them is all the stuff you have on the mid-deck. You have to get it all out, put it away, and make it livable.
Discovery, launch director.
Discovery, go ahead, sir.
Well, CJ, the vehicle's clean and the teams are go. And this time Mother Nature is cooperating, so it looks like third time really is the charm. We wish you and your team good luck and Godspeed.
Thanks, P. On behalf of the crew of Discovery, thanks to everyone who helped prepare for this mission. Let's go step up the science on the International Space Station.
NTD launch director, you do have a go to launch Discovery.
And I copy that, launch director.
Copy on Discovery OTC, close launch advisors, initiate O2 flow.
Discovery, roger. There goes the beanie cap crew. Let's go ahead and check the tap in.
Pressurization.
Roger. 102, auto. 5, 6, 7, there they go. LVLH on the left. On the right. Houston Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll Discovery.
3 at 104. Copy. Needles are centering up.
PC less than 50.
Copy, Jose. Oh, yeah. All right. 103, Team Ecos.
Cut up on the live.
Copy, Jose. There it is. All right, 25.8. All right, you can raise up your seat if you want to. Good.
Timer.
All right, good job. All right. It's working hard to tank, and I'm waiting for the 20-second plus X. Lift up in your seat. There it goes. All right, we're waiting for 104. 4. 1 potato, 2 potato. I started it at 56. I will release it at 16 after.
Well, there's no experience on the planet quite like the experience of leaving the planet. That rocket is just absolutely amazing, and you've just had the ride of your life. You're recovering from it, and